How do you think, I mean, everybody assumes that health care will lead the agenda when you come back. Is that going to be the case?
I think that will lead, in the beginning, the public view, but on our committee on regulation reform and handling some of the problems, rating agencies and other things, we're going to be extremely active, and I would think that would start coming into view again.
What's been your reaction to some of the data we've been getting over the last week? You know, it's been decent. I guess that's probably the best word for it. Home sales, durables, jobless claims, people beginning to wonder if maybe we're stalling out here because although the pace of firing may have eased, people are still filing new jobless claims.
That's true, Carl. But I'm more optimistic coming back in the fall session than when I left for the break.
Really?
I think this isn't going to be a spectacular explosion, but I think a lot of the media, including yourselves, are perhaps approaching it in a negative way that'll help us.
No. You must have us confused with some other media.
Probably.
When you were, as you've been on recess, I assume you've held some town halls, right?
I had telephonic town halls. I didn't do any live ones. I spent most of my time going to medical centers, clinics, talking with large segments of people on a one-on-one situation and in groups. So I think I got a pretty good feel. But I did telephonic town meetings where I would talk to, on a conference call, 5,000 people at a time.
Are you getting the sense, break it into two parts, have their views on health care been as vociferous as we've seen on television, right, on cable TV? And are there hopes for the economy getting better or worse?
Yes, I think one of your guests earlier in the show talked about the cap and trade reaction that they're getting when they're going around the country.
Yeah.
And it's not too dissimilar to the health care thing. I think what's being reflected is an awful lot of anxiety in the system. And that's why it looks like it's turmoil on a specific issue, but I'm not sure it's on a specific issue. I think it's anxiety on everything. But when you get a chance on a one-on-one situation or in a cooler atmosphere to explain whether it's health care, whether it's cap and trade, whether it's the budget, or where we may be going in the economy, people seem to settle down. I think this is a very good time for a strong presence of national and state leadership all over the country. And we have to start exacerbating the good feelings that we can do it. We can develop our own destiny. And I'm looking forward to the president coming back from vacation, all charged up and ready to go. The American people want that.
I have a quick question for you, sir. It's Jim Muriel.
Yes.
Were you surprised at, and maybe not at your town hall meetings, but at the pushback this country was giving toward health care? Or does the pushback not really exist? Was that kind of overblown by the media? What's your feel on what the barometer is on what the public wants?
I think it breaks into two segments. I think it's an excellent question. I think there were a whole group of people that realized it could be exacerbated for political purposes. But you could disregard those. But there was honest, strong feeling out there. We would make a mistake if we missed the fact there's an awful lot of confusion and misunderstanding among people. That's our obligation, to educate and inform before we move on. I don't know that it was extreme. I think, a matter of fact, I'm encouraged with the fact that we have a democratic process going on a major, major issue, very difficult. What we have to learn from this is let's take our time, let's explain what we're going to do. Let's, it's, 17% of the gross domestic product. It affects every individual very personally, and you're not going to take a risk and change your health care on a maybe. You want to know. So we've got this obligation in government and in leadership to let this be a soft landing for people, to really explain to them what's going to happen, what potentially can happen. But everywhere I run into this dichotomy. Almost all people want health care reform. They just don't want it where they don't know what it's going to be. So they want it explained, and they start to get more comfortable with the amount of knowledge and information that you give them.
Congressman, this is Tony Crescenzi of PIMCO. Yes. What major regulatory reforms do you expect in the financial sector to come out of the next session of Congress? And do you think that the movement in financial asset prices recently, the improvement in financial conditions, might change the debate in any manner?
Well, it may. I want to make sure we don't exacerbate reform. We should have reform. There's some major areas that we need the reform in. One, rating agencies. I've been working on that intently now for 6-8 weeks. We're putting a bill together. But we don't want to go overboard. This is not the time to take a sledgehammer or a baseball bat to our regulatory system. This is a time to say we have to be surgical in our approaches. We have some holes, we have some vacuums, we have some limitations, and let's address those. And in some instances, quite frankly, we have a lot to do because, well, for instance, in our international situation with the EU, that's a major problem. We just haven't been paying attention to that relationship and the effect that it has. You know, the other day I was going over some of the figures. The relationship between the United States and the EU on trade on a daily basis is $2 billion, our largest trading partner. Now that's, when you've got a neighbor living as close and as interrelated as we are, you should pay a little attention to them, and they better pay a little attention to you, because by just doing a slight movement, somebody told me we have more investments in Belgium, capital-wise, than we have in China.